share my screen. While I'm doing this, all right. While I'm doing this, since we have a small group today, let's actually keep it engaging so that even you are not bored, and it's an opportunity for everyone to uh, ask your questions and get answers to any and all questions you might have. Right. With that, we'll get started. My name is Vish. I lead the design team here at Appomate, and yeah, welcome to the Design Foundation series for app and SaaS founders. Quickly to introduce, like I said, my name is Vish. I lead the design team here. I've been here for more than 10 years now, and I started my career as a developer. I have also done product management and UX designing. And throughout these 10 years, we have worked on more than 100 different products, and we have seen a lot of products succeed. We have seen a few products fail. And what we have done is we have actually collected all our learnings from all these projects, and we have put together all our learnings into this series so that we can actually share our learnings with you. So you don't need to do the same mistakes that we saw the people do. With that, we also have Zain on the call. I'll let Zain introduce himself. Zain, if you want to quickly go on mute and yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm head of product strategy here at Appomate. I guess what my role is there to help strategize the direction of the business. Really just trying to enhance what Vish and the design team do as part of the design, as part of validation, as well as Amy as well. There to, I guess, help you in any facet of the stage that you're in. So we've got people who approach us that already have a launched product. We've got people who need help with validation because they've got this spark of an idea that they need to help validate. So we're there from an end-to-end solution. We try and hold hands with our entrepreneurs throughout the whole entire journey. And that's from, like I mentioned, from validation all the way through to post-launch support, marketing, and all those things that you might need and require as a business. So that's what we're here for. Thank you, Vish.
Awesome. Thanks, Zain. So yeah, if you guys have any questions for any of us, please feel free to send us a message here on chat and one of us will respond. But that, we'll actually look at the basics of UX. We'll go through the fog behavior model, the customer life cycle, and our core design principles that we follow on all our design projects. We'll also use a case study to explain how some of these principles can be applied when you are working on your own product. We'll have some Q&A at the end, and then we'll also distribute the user persona template at the end of this that we generally use when we start the requirements capture when we start a new project. So what is UX, right? So when you Google what is UX on Google, you'll actually find a lot of different definitions, but the one that resonates with us the most is it's basically the encompassing experience for any user from the very first initial touch point to the very final touch point when they're interacting with your product or service. It prioritizes the user's needs, their preferences, their challenges. Basically, it puts the user at the heart of everything that you do when you're building your product. It's about crafting solutions that actually resonate with your user and applies for their context of use rather than generalizing it. Now, before I go to the next one, I want to ask a question for you guys. Why is UX important, right? And before we answer that, can anyone guess how many apps there are in the market right now or today? Like on both App Store and Play Store combined, or individually on App Store, individually on Play Store? Any guesses?
5 million. 5 million.
5 million? Yeah, that's pretty close. All right. There's about 5.5 million apps in the market today. So there's more than 1.8 million apps on the Apple App Store, and there's more than 3.5 million apps on the Google Play Store. But why UX is important is because of all these options for the user. Every user has multiple options today, right? Because of so many apps. What happens is 43% of users abandon apps only after a single use. If they don't get a great experience, they just stop using it. And 71% of users churn within the first 90 days because they like the app, they start using it, but then they realize, hey, this doesn't really solve my problem or get the job done for me, right? This is such a large number where imagine if you acquire 100 users and after 3 months, you only end up with 29. That's such a waste of marketing resources, right? Any guesses on what's the average cost to acquire a user in Australia? Anybody wants to take a
About $5 or something like that.
bucks? Yeah. Yeah. So that's $5.1 on Apple App Store and 4.6 on Google Play Store. So average it about $5. So essentially you're spending $5 per user to acquire them and get them onto the app. And if they stop using your app just after once or within the first 3 months, that's such a waste of marketing dollars, right? So that's why having a great UX is important so that you can maximize every dollar you spend on marketing and acquiring customers and get the users to become sticky and stay with your app and product or service and continue to be your customer. So when we work on design projects, we use this model called the BJ Fogg behavior model. Now, what this is a psychological behavior model that was created by Professor BJ Fogg in 2007. So Professor BJ Fogg, he was a professor at Stanford. I think he's still working there. I'm not 100% sure. But he created this model based on user psychology. And what it says is it very simply talks about the relationship between motivation to do something and the ability to do it or execute the work and the amount of persuasion or prompting that you need to provide someone to take an action, right? So if the motivation is really high and if something's very easy to do, then people will take actions without a lot of prompting, such as subscribing to a product, becoming a member, making a purchase, etc. Right? But if it is very difficult to execute that, even if their motivation is high, you need to prompt them a lot to take action. At the same time, if the motivation is really low and if something's really hard to do, then again, people will not take action. You need to prompt them a lot. Now, this additional effort or this gap here is generally filled by bombarding the user with emails, notifications, SMS, or any and all communication that you send out to your users. So one of the key things that we take out or we learn from this model that we apply to all the projects that we work on and which you can work on too is identifying those points of high motivation for your users and making it really easy for the user to take an action. We'll take an example, right? Amazon. Amazon is one such fantastic example of well executed fog behavior model. So yes, on Amazon mobile app, when you're shopping, you can add products to your cart and check out. But what Amazon saw was that people added a lot more number of products to their cart, but when they checked out a lot less number of products. The reason being, from the time they actually added products to the cart and the time of checkout, their motivation levels dropped. So what Amazon did was they introduced a one-click buy now button. So what it does is you add products to your cart. Instead of adding products to your cart, you are looking at a product and you can click buy the product with a single click. when you're looking at a product on the Amazon app, your motivation is really high because you're engaging with the product, and your motivation level to buy the product is high. And if Amazon makes it easy to buy the product immediately, you might probably buy it even if you don't need it. So that was the whole premise of it. And I actually personally just buy everything using the single buy now button instead of adding multiple items to the cart and then checking out. So yeah, that's one practical application of it. Right now, where all do we have to apply this, or where all do we look at the user psychology strategically and make changes in our product? Right. So that's the next question, and we actually look at the whole customer lifecycle. So you have to look at it from every step the customer follows, every touch point in interacting with your product or service. So the first one is awareness. So the very first time the customer becomes aware of your product, how can you provide them that great experience? To customers downloading your app or installing your app on their phone, which is acquisition, and activation, basically the very first time the user uses your app and sees the value in it. We call it as the aha moment. And then the user generating some sort of a revenue for the business, be it making a purchase, becoming a member, purchasing a subscription, engaging with an ad, whatever. And then finally, retention. So the user, how can we remind the user to come back to our app, use it again and again, thereby making them a retained user and keeping the app on top of their minds. And essentially making the app a part of their habit loop as well, right? Now, one key thing that's missing here is in this customer lifecycle, you are actually acquiring a customer, making them aware of your product, and taking them through this for every user. But as you know, this is not scalable unless you have, lots of funding available, right? But there's also ways where even without a lot of budget, every product can sell itself, get more customers, and we call it as the product-led growth. And we do that via referrals. So incorporating product-led growth mechanics within the product will help existing customers and users refer the product or service to other customers and bring them onto the app or make them aware of the product. So that's the missing link between generic customer lifecycle and product-led growth customer lifecycle. Right. Before I go to our core design principles, any questions on how to approach a product design, how to approach a UX with the behavior model and looking at the whole customer lifecycle? Anything I can answer before I go to the next step? All right, good. Cool. So one of the key things or the very first design principle that we follow is always putting users first. Now we use a framework called jobs to be done model, jobs to be done framework. So we'll talk a bit about that in our next session, but essentially our first design principle, what it says is users are at the core of everything that you do for your app or service, right? So understanding their needs, their wants, their motivations, and their context of use can help you deliver an app that actually resonates with them. Now, how can you understand their needs and wants? That's where jobs to be done framework comes into picture, where you can actually apply that framework and understand their requirements. And then their motivation, and does the design or does your product resonate with the target market? How do you answer that? That is basically by using user testing and talking to people, showing the prototypes to potential customers and getting their feedback. Right. The reason context becomes very important is, think of this as an example, right? So if you're traveling on the train or bus and you're standing, you're holding the rails with one hand, you're holding your phone with the other, you're using the app, right? Especially if you have a large screen phone, things that are at the top of the screen may be really hard for you to reach because you're using the phone with a single hand. But at the same time, think of the context where you are sitting comfortably on a couch. Be it anywhere on the screen, it becomes easy for you to reach because you have both your hands that you can use, right? So understanding that context will help you decide and direct how your designs for your product should be, and ensuring that the designs work for the context will help the app resonate more and more with the target market. Now, a couple of examples of putting users first, right? So we have Google on one side, we have Yahoo on the other side. Both are search engines, right? But Google focused on the user's job. And when you're trying to search for something, the core job that you're trying to get done is finding something, right? So Google focused their entire experience on that and just provided a search bar with just a couple of buttons and allowed the user to focus completely on the job instead of providing more and more distractions. With Yahoo, yes, they do have a search bar as well, but the search page has a lot of distractions for the user, and there's news and other things. And if the user is trying to find something, they have to look for where to find it, right? And then find it. Because of this difference in the design and the interaction, you can see how Google has almost monopolized the market, and Yahoo is, still there, but with a lot less user base. The second one is minimizing user effort, right? And we talked about this when we were talking about the fog behavior model. Nowadays, users' ability to focus on some things reducing day by day, right? So understanding, the user's usability and the amount of time they can actually spend on focusing on something will ensure and that your designs are usable for your target market, and your product becomes easy to use and navigate, and thereby reduces users frustration, right? Nowadays with short form content, FYI, short form content is no longer just for social media anymore. We have been seeing short form content becoming a part of even banking applications today. So we are all trained to expect instant results in short and succinct summaries, right? There's also some good statistics on why minimizing user effort is important. There's as page load time goes up 1 second to from 1 second to 10 seconds, a mobile website visitor bounce rate increases by about 123%. Some of the examples that you can see where they have actually made user effort, reduced user effort really well and made it really easy for the users to use are some of these apps. So the first one we have is YouTube, right? Now, YouTube also has short form content. So we'll talk about probably short form content sometime later. But YouTube, the way they are minimizing user effort is once you play a video, if you have the autoplay turned on, you don't even need to select the next video to play. You can just continue to watch it. And once the current video ends, it will automatically start playing the next video, right? So again, Google's being really smart about it, or YouTube's being really smart about it, where they're not actually playing any random video. They're actually trying to understand your watch history and then trying to play the next video, which they think you might most probably like, right? So it's all personalized again. That way, they're even removing the need for a user to click the play button and making it really, really easy to consume content so that it becomes really easy for the user and the users become sticky. We were talking about Amazon. Amazon's single click buy now button. So, within a single product, you can actually click on that. So becomes really easy to buy it. The third one is maybe not sure how many of you are aware of this. This is a news application called InShorts, mainly mainly serving the South Asian market. So what it does is it actually is a news application, and I, for one, don't consume a lot of news nowadays because it takes a lot of time to read through newspapers. But when I first found InShorts, it was fantastic because it actually summarizes every news articles in less than 60 words, just this one paragraph. And then if I like the news article and if I am intrigued by it, if I'm curious about it, then I can actually read the full news article by clicking on this or engaging with this news article. That way, it's actually reducing the amount of effort it takes for me to consume news, and it makes it really sticky for me to for a lot of users to consume news, and it makes it really the go-to news consumption app for users. And all these products, all three products, have millions of users across the world. Right? That's the power of reducing the amount of effort the user has to put in to using your product. The third one is prioritizing value over features. Now, when you talk to users, you may come up with 100 different things, 100 different ideas for your product, right? But ultimately, overloading your app with features will only bring in distractions, right? So users, although they say, they need A, B, C to X, Y, Z, they always seek valuable experiences, right? And nobody likes distractions anymore. So it's always better to ensure that your app has only the most important valuable things and not overload your app with features. So designs should generally focus on adding value, minimizing distractions, and ensuring that the users go from the source to the destination or get their job done as efficiently as possible. Websites with high cognitive load experience a 38% increase in user abandonment. Now, if you think of the Yahoo example that we talked about a couple of seconds ago or a couple of minutes ago, there was a lot of cognitive load there. The user had to, look at all the other news articles and ads and everything while they're searching for something. That adds to the cognitive load, right? And as you can see, or as you already know, the amount of user engagement with Google is much higher than Yahoo, and that's because of that cognitive load. Apps with simple and clear designs experience a 22% increase in conversion rates, right? And the reason for that is because the user is clear on what is the job that they're trying to do. They know how to do it. And once they do it, they can easily focus on what the result is, right? And that doesn't mean that you don't provide the user with multiple other options or other important things. You provide that, but in a way that it doesn't interfere with the key job the user is trying to get done. One of the best examples is Google. And I know you can say that you can see that I love Google and Google products because of the way it's really, really simple. But trust me, I also have other examples. It's not just Google anymore. When you are on the search page, Google also provides this option where you can interact with other products that they have and other, with different jobs. But this menu or this launcher is actually here somewhere. They're tucked to the side and it doesn't interfere with your search job. Google could have just laid out all these icons here and cluttered this interface, but they did not do it, thankfully. The next one is data-driven decision making. So this one is basically, probably one of the most important things that all of us need to be aware of, cognizant of when we are working on our own products. The reason being, design decisions, for that matter, any business decision, should not be based solely on intuition. So always look for both quantitative and qualitative data to validate your hypothesis, your assumptions, and ensure that user value is being delivered and you are actually preventing wasted resources. A study by Gartner actually found that 80% of new products fail to achieve product market fit. And the whole reason behind it is there's not sufficient demand. And why people fail to understand that there's sufficient demand is because they're basing it solely on intuition rather than empirical data. A study by Harvard actually found that businesses that use data-driven decision making are 3 times more likely to achieve product market fit than that doesn't. And another research by Bain and Company also found that data-driven decision making can help businesses reduce the time to reach product market fit by up to 50%. We'll just quickly talk a bit about product market fit. So product market fit is basically the state where your product is actually serving the need for a niche in the market, and the product is a right fit for that market segment of users, and the product is getting sufficient traction on its own without you having to push the product significantly hard. Right? So the goal of any new business is reaching that product market fit, and data-driven decision making can actually not only accelerate reaching product market fit, but it will also increase the chance of achieving product market fit. Again, going to some of the examples here. The first one, you all know which product this is. It's Instagram. When Instagram launched, it launched as, I think it was called Bourbon or something. It was similar to Facebook, where people could just post statuses, they could post images, they could share their location, they could check in, check out. They could do a lot more, right? But 3 months into launching the product, they started looking at the data of what the users were using Instagram for or Bourbon for, and they realized that most of their users were just using the app to share images with each other, right? And what they did was they actually removed all the other distractions from the product and relaunched the product as Instagram. Right? And you know how Instagram grew and the amount of user base it has, and it also got acquired by Meta. So basically, what Instagram did was they actually made decisions based on the data to remove distractions and focus on the user's core value that they were using it for. The second one is Facebook. So originally, when Facebook launched, it was mainly a social media. But when Facebook started analyzing the data on how users are using Facebook and what they're using Facebook for, they started seeing that people were making posts about selling things or asking for things that they want to buy. And basically they saw that there was a need for that marketplace within the product, and people were actually trying to use Facebook for that too. So what Facebook did, they actually introduced the marketplace feature as a new value addition. And immediately, Facebook was not only adopted by individual users who are using it for social needs, but also by businesses who are now trying to sell to other users in the platform. So that drove a huge growth trajectory within Facebook. The third example here, which I have, is realestate.com. So originally, realestate.com was basically a place where you could list your properties to either sell or to rent it out, and people would go to realestate.com to either find properties to purchase or rent, right? But what they started saying was every time the user went away from the app, they were going away from the app to understand, can I actually borrow this property? What is my borrowing capacity, etc. That particular missing piece was not available on the app. That was taking the users away from realestate.com. So realestate.com decided they're going to bring that home loan calculator and also connect the users to comparing home loans. So when someone's using the app to purchase a property, they no longer have to go out of the app to understand if that property is feasible for them to purchase. They can immediately look at that in the app itself to see if they can buy it, and also look at what the interest rates and the home loan rates are within the app without having to go out. Now that drove user retention and the retention rates and the amount of growth that realestate.com saw as well. The next one is embracing product-led growth. So product-led growth focuses on the full customer lifecycle, but especially the user acquisition side of things, the awareness side of things, engagement and conversion through the product itself. So basically, product-led growth literally stands for the product is selling itself. Right? The way to get product-led growth or drive product-led growth is to personalize the user experience and get the user to that aha moment as quickly and as easily as possible, thereby leading to an increased user engagement and loyalty. 53% of buyers would prefer to buy the software without any interaction with sales, right? And the best use case here that we have seen in the recent past is Slack. A lot of you would have already used Slack before, but Slack actually grew to 10 million daily active users in less than 2 years of launching using product-led growth. As soon as you create an account, Slack prompts you to invite your team, and thereby Slack doesn't have to manually market to other members of your team. So they are leveraging the users that they're acquiring to grow their user base. Similarly, Dropbox, similarly, Zoom as well. So Dropbox, what they do is you create a free account, you get 500 MB of storage space. If you want more storage space, you invite a friend, and if they join, both you and your friend get 500 MB of storage space, right? So that way, they're tying the incentive to bring in other users back to the core value of the product so that the product can grow, as well as there's a really valuable, tangible incentive for the user. The other way to drive product-led growth is through freemium models. So Zoom is another great example of it. People can try using Zoom for free. They create a free account, get on video calls, and as long as they don't need more than 40 minutes or more than 3 users, they can continue to be on a free version of Zoom call. But now that they have seen the value of Zoom, and the moment they want more than 40 minutes or more than 3 users on the call, they have to purchase a paid subscription. Thereby, every user they have acquired as a free user has the potential to convert into a paid customer. And like we saw earlier, we have about 5.5 million apps in the market today. And just because of the sheer number of options that the users have, aesthetics is not just a nice to have anymore. Having a visually appealing and engaging app has become a table stake item for the users. Apps with good aesthetics have a 70% higher retention, and it also increases the user trust within the product by about 95%. Apps which don't have a strong aesthetic design can actually reduce the user trust in them. But apps with a strong design can increase in-app purchases by about 30%. So even in the Google Play Store and Apple App Store, apps with 4.5 or higher rating are downloaded 250% more than apps without. there's actually a really good correlation between aesthetics and the amount of returns the app or the product delivers for their stakeholders. So you can see that apps with great aesthetics generates anywhere between 4 to 7% more revenue for the business and anywhere between 5 to 10% more returns for the shareholders. And this was research that was done by McKinsey. Finally, mobile first designs. So mobile first designs is one of our key design principles that we follow for almost all our products today. The reason being, mobile first designs prioritize the experience on a smaller real estate or small screens. And if the design can work for the small screen, the assumption is it works for the larger screens as well. Now, if the user experience is optimized for small screens, then the interactions can be seamless and you're focusing or you'll be forced to focus on only showing those most valuable things because of the scarcity of real estate. Now, this approach leads to more accessible and more inclusive products, and it will also cater to majority of the users, right? And the reason being, it's like 85% of internet traffic today is via mobile devices. So a mobile first design can actually lead to 20% higher conversion rates compared to traditional desktop first designs. 57% of consumers are willing to stop using a product if they don't have a great mobile experience. Now, before I go to the case study, any questions on any of these things that we talked about? Did anything resonate? Was anything new for you guys? Or did you find anything that you need to start focusing on within your own products? All right. White punch, eh? All right.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
So it doesn't mean your app shouldn't have features. It just shouldn't crowd the screen out. So
Correct.
the
That's right.
features should be there, but less visible.
You're right, but I would just phrase it slightly differently. Your app needs features, but the features must be surfaced to the users at the right time, at the right context.
Right.
If the user is trying to do something else, there's no point in showing a feature which may not be relevant to the job that the user is trying to get done.
So that might be via Dropbox, drop this, but yeah, I understand because you're dealing with a small real estate. Every little bit counts. So
Correct.
Yeah, understand.
Correct. Awesome. So yeah, we'll go through the case study, right? And this business, it's called MyCombat. This is a Sydney-based business, which was started by MMA fighter. So MyCombat basically is an app that serves as a comprehensive training guide or training aid designed specifically for MMA athletes or combat athletes. Basically, the premise is it allows the trainers or combat athletes to input data from their training sessions and generate valuable insights that they can then use to improve their training or optimize their training plan, right? It also helps athletes stay on top of their progress and their trainers to see how the athlete is progressing and also see the workload graph and utilize goal setting features to visualize and achieve their training objectives and all that. But what happens was MyCombat, when they initially came to us, they already had the app in the market for a few months, but they were not seeing any traction in the market. And they basically came to us with a problem statement that said, they have been getting feedback from users that the designs were underwhelming and it had technical issues. And despite it, despite its potential benefit to both trainers and athletes, the app was not utilized as much as they were hoping it would be. So their brief to us was A, look at the whole app, understand the shortcomings, and let's address them. B, enhance its user experience. And C, their ultimate objective was to drive user adoption and conversion, and that would unlock the app's full potential. I'll show you the original homepage. So this is how they had their app designed originally. So the problem with this was the original homepage was basically a list of buttons. Essentially, think of it as a menu, right? So as soon as you come into the app, every time you just see a bunch of buttons as a user, right? There's nothing different. But we know that users expect to see immediate results. So as soon as the user comes in, they need value. But here, every time they come in, they see the same thing. Right? What we did was we actually changed the homepage to look like this. So we actually got rid of all the buttons and we started showcasing the progress that the user wanted to see about their training and to get a quick snapshot of where they are with their training as soon as they came into the app. So we brought in progress this week based on skills and conditioning. And then we also showed training workload, well-being, sleep, stress, and energy, very visual. They don't have to read through it. As soon as they see it, they know how much energy they have, how much stress they are in, all that. And they also have the goals section, and we made it really easy and intuitive to consume the summary of their training as soon as they came into the app. Right? And this actually made it easy for the user to understand where they are at and also to get a grip on the key job that they were trying to get done. Right? And we also removed some of these other functionality like my teams, injury and recovery, and all that, and focused mainly on the user's core need, which is to record and track training progress. The other page was recording the training. So this was how it was originally designed, and we actually changed it to this way. Instead of the user actually inputting, okay, hours of sleep 7, quality of sleep is 7. We found out that users did not know what a 7 quality of sleep meant. But when we changed it, how did you sleep, with emojis and with visual references, they were immediately able to resonate with it and understand what we are asking for and what they need to input. And even here in the training data, we updated the UI like this to make it more visual and more easy for the user to input it, thereby reducing the amount of time the user is spending in recording their training, because that is not their core job. Their core job is training, but recording their training is a supplementary action that they're performing. After we did all this and launched the product again, the results were fantastic, right? So the business immediately saw an increase in the user conversion. They had 100% 5-star ratings on the App Store and Play Store. I think I took this screenshot a couple of months ago. I think now they have a lot more. And their confidence to invest in marketing and drive the user acquisition really increased. And it actually made more time for MMA training for the athletes rather than trying to use the app. So yeah, I mean that's a quick case study of how we applied a lot of these design principles to redesign a product and put the product back on the right trajectory to reach product market fit. Any questions on this? Cool. So that's what I had for today's session. But I want to spend the next 5-10 minutes answering any questions you might have about your own product. If you want to share anything or ask any questions, so we can help you out.
Could I go back to that solution on the app? The first screen you showed where they had a whole lot of buttons to choose from, and then you replaced it with the results of their previous search. Now, I would have thought the buttons were still required because
Yeah.
you needed to direct them to a particular function, whether it be having a look at a training schedule or whatever. So what happened to those options in that first screen?
Sorry, hold on. Let me just back to this. Sorry, I'll just come back to that page.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let me just do this. All right, I'll just use this. So yeah, what was happening was all these buttons. If you clicked on training, you were actually seeing the training information in a not so visual way. If you clicked on well-being, you would actually see your sleep data, your stress data, your energy data, everything. So essentially, instead of getting the user to click on the buttons, we actually brought in the summary of all these that the user is caring about or what's important for the user immediately visible. So as soon as the user opens the app. So this was the homepage, right? So if the user clicked on well-being, so you can see that there are different tabs here. So we actually moved all these stuff into the tabs so that the user can move between the tabs and get more in-depth data. But essentially the homepage, the whole idea there was as soon as the user opens the app, we want the user to get valuable content and the data should be dynamic instead of having a static list of menu items.
Right. Right. So if you opened with the picture on the right, where would you click to go to the training page, for example, or?
Yeah. So you can either click on this training workload here.
Because in a sense, you had to fish and look for it.
Sorry?
Yeah, go on. I was just going to say, you almost had to look for your tab in that picture on the right there.
Oh, here at the top. Yeah. So we actually broke down the training into skills and conditioning because that was the terminology that trainers were using or the athletes were using. So instead of the user having to search for training, they can see a full summary of their training and the progress here. They could either click on this or this or the tabs to go into more details on their training there.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was basically providing them the summary of their data as soon as they see it, and then providing them a seamless entry point into more detailed training information there.
Okay. Ask a follow-up question. Are the color the colors you use? What I take it you got to select a few colors so the app becomes recognizable and it's linked to the brand.
Sure.
Did you choose red for any particular reason, or is I suppose the red's what they started off with? So
yeah. So the client had already chosen the brand color, so they had their brand already was based on red and black. So that's what we continued with as well.
have you got any thoughts about the particular colors with particular types of apps?
Yeah, for sure. Hold on, let me just show you. So there's this something called color emotion guide. So every color evokes a different emotion in the user, right? And brands use that very strategically. So depending on what you want your brand to represent or signify, you can actually choose the colors. So obviously this is not the exact shade, but the family of colors. So orange or amber signifies optimism, clarity, warmth. The deeper orange or the saffron color talks about friendly, cheerful, confidence. Red is more about excitement, youthful, bold. Purple, blue is trust, dependable, strength, etc. Green is growth, health. So it depends on what you want your brand to represent or signify. You can actually choose the type of colors that you want to.
Seems like Google couldn't make up their mind.
Google actually has multiple products, right? So Google has multiple products that represent multiple different things. For example, YouTube, if you look at their individual products have a primary color or a core color. So look at YouTube, right? So YouTube has red because it's more on, they're targeting more youth market and, the excitement of consuming content from wherever they are. So they use red.
Yep.
But think of LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn is more blue because they're building a professional community and they want to build that trust within the community. And think of something like Tropicana or Monster or some Starbucks or something like that. They use more of green because they're talking to the health or the growth or the peace side of things. So
Yep. Great. Thank you.
yeah. Any other questions?
If no one else is asking, I ask another one.
Sure.
So I've been having a look at these no-code apps to build an app.
Sure.
Can I ask you, in terms of building apps, have you used a selection, or are you versed in a number of different ones?
Look,
So that if the client comes to you and has used a particular one.
yeah, look, I mean, that actually depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So there are pros and cons to both approaches, right? So basically with no code, the pro is obviously you will have a product out there really quick. But the con is it's not a long-term solution. So in the long term, you will have to rebuild the product because the current no-code platforms won't be able to scale that much. And also you are limited by the designs that the low-code platforms support, right? So it depends on your immediate objectives. We'll look at the pros and cons of both low-code and a custom development uh, solution, and then we would recommend what the best opportunity could be. For example, if it's a very novel product, nobody else have done it before, you're not even sure if people would understand it or people need it, then yes, you could use a no code to have a very minimal MVP out there to test it out, get market feedback. So you can actually get the product out there in like a couple of weeks. But say, for example, if you know that there's a market for it and other people have done it and you're trying to do it better and you want to provide a really bespoke nice experience to your users, then if the no code solution doesn't offer that kind of experience, then you would go with custom development. Now, again, with custom development, there are multiple ways. You go with native, which is native Android, native iOS development, which means you have two separate code bases for each platform. And or the other one is a hybrid approach where you use something like React or Flutter, where you use one code base but generate both iOS and Android applications. Now, even there, it depends on the context of use. if your app is really heavy on, say, the core device capabilities like gyroscope, or if it's using augmented reality, or if it's a lot more heavy on the graphics and the gaming side of things, then a native application would be more preferable uh, than a hybrid approach. But say if it is a business application and you're basically doing a lot of business logic on the back end, then a hybrid application works as well. And there's another way as well, like which is called as um, what is that? It's called as it's a what PFA, or web applications, hybrid web applications, I guess. I forgot the name. I'll find out the name and I'll tell you. But basically,
Yep.
you build a website and you can let your users install that website on your phone as an app. So Starbucks does it on one of their for one of their loyalty programs, not for their core application. But yeah, it really depends on what your immediate objectives are and what you're trying to build.
Yeah, I was having a look at Bubble, and it has a function where you can actually reduce the image to fit whatever the screen size. So it also allows you then to have a look at tablets. So I'll be able to
Yes.
zoom in and zoom out based on your screen size.
Yeah. I mean, in such scenarios, what we generally do is we look at what your long-term plan is, what your long-term customer acquisition goals are, because obviously Bubble bills you based on the number of users and all that, and you would not be able to take the code base out of Bubble. So ultimately, if you're planning to use Bubble uh, for the MVP and then switch over, that's great. But if Bubble's pricing is going to work for you for your long-term plan as well, that's great. But if you feel that as you grow and if you have a lot of users, your Bubble pricing might become too huge, then you'd probably move over to a custom one sooner rather than later. So I think Zane has a
Yeah,
great
just to add on that,
experience on that.
actually.
That's what I'm looking at now. So
Just to touch on that a little bit, I guess what's where Bubble's great, it's great for a validation process. It's basically, you can use that as kind of like a stepping stone to validation with a live product, because eventually it's going to get to a point where you will start needing and requiring more customization based on your client feedback. And that's when it's going to get to a point where you'll need to basically throw it out and start again. This is why, as a process, when we actually look to build something, we go with that in mind, that we have the ability to be able to build something custom right now that allows you to be able to grow with the business. So you're not actually having to throw anything out to restart anything as well. So we find that if you can hit the market still pretty quickly, which we do, we have an average of around about 5 months, which is half the time of the average developer in Australia. You're still hitting the market and saving yourself some coin, being able to really, I guess, get that validation and use that innovation based on that client feedback where you still got some money left behind. What we've also found that using any sort of no code or Bubble, for example, you could still be spending $50,000 to $60,000 on something you can't customize. So it's an ecosystem that has its place in what you're trying to do. But we find for early stage founders, they're actually probably not actually saving that much money anyway, to be perfectly honest, as well. So that's just another thing to think about.
yeah, okay, great, yeah, and also I suppose the other factor of that is also the maintenance app. I presume the pro for Bubble is that would automatically have all the security features, whereas if you were creating something, you'd have to build all that in, but also you'd have to maintain it. So any changes to your Microsoft or your operating system would have to be reflected in your program?
Yeah, it does, but general operating costs for something like that is actually quite achievable for most as well. We could be looking at anywhere from $1,500 to $3-4 grand. But if you're comparing that to brick and mortar businesses, that's absolutely nothing. And when we're talking the ecosystem of like a bubble or something like that, you're actually locked into their ecosystem. So yes, they may have all the security and stuff like that, but what if they choose to be in a direction that you're not comfortable with, or you choose not to? What if they decided to take their data if you're working on something quite sensitive and they try to take their data offshore or something like that? You're kind of stuck to their ecosystem. And then if you wanted to try and pull away from that, it makes it even more increasingly difficult as well. So pros and cons to everything. It's about what you desire as a goal for your business. And that's where you can make that decision and that distinction.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. There's fair number of bridges across there. Yeah, true.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, we have just hit the time, so hope today's session was helpful for a lot of you. So if you have any questions, shoot us a message, send us an email, and we're going to distribute the user persona template after the session ends. So look out for an email from us. And yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vish. Appreciate your time.
Cheers.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys. Thank you. Thanks, Zane.